There is a road in northern Italy that cuts through the landscape with unnatural precision. It does not curve around hills or bend with the terrain. It moves forward in a straight line, crossing fields, disappearing beneath modern streets, reappearing again beyond towns that were built centuries later. In some places, only fragments remain, worn stones beneath grass, sections buried under layers of soil, outlines visible only from above. And yet, despite its age, the direction never changes. It continues toward places that no longer seem to matter. At first, this is not mysterious. Ancient roads were essential infrastructure. Civilizations depended on them for trade, military movement, communication, and expansion. The Roman road system alone connected vast regions across Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia, linking cities that once formed the center of political and economic life. This is the official explanation, and it is supported by extensive historical evidence. But as with many things that survive from the ancient world, the closer the roads are examined, the more unusual they begin to feel, because some of them continue far beyond the places we associate with their construction. They pass through empty land, they stretch toward regions where little remains, and in certain cases, the roads themselves appear older than the settlements surrounding them. This creates a subtle contradiction. Roads are usually understood as responses to civilization. They connect active places. They emerge because movement between locations becomes necessary. But what happens when the road survives, and the destination does not, across different parts of the world? There are ancient pathways that no longer seem connected to any meaningful network. Stone roads ending in forests, straight routes crossing barren terrain, buried foundations discovered beneath modern cities, suggesting earlier systems of movement, long forgotten beneath newer layers of construction. Individually, these are not difficult to explain. Cities collapse, trade routes shift, landscapes change. Over centuries, settlements disappear while more durable structures remain. Stone survives longer than wood, longer than memory, longer even than written records in some cases. This is entirely reasonable. And yet, when viewed collectively, the roads begin to suggest something larger, not a hidden civilization, but a scale of connectivity that may have been broader than we usually imagine, because roads imply movement, regular movement, sustained movement. A road is not simply built for occasional use. Large roads require labor, planning, maintenance. They exist because enough people repeatedly travel between places to justify their construction. And this raises an interesting question. If some of these roads now lead into emptiness, then what once existed at the other end? The official answer often points toward lost settlements. Archaeology continues to uncover village trading posts and smaller urban centers that disappeared through war, environmental change, or economic decline. In many cases, roads that appear isolated today once connected thriving communities. This explanation accounts for much of the evidence, but not all of the feeling these roads create, because there is something psychologically unusual about infrastructure surviving without context. A road suggests intention, direction, purpose. When the surrounding structures vanish, the road remains as a kind of outline, visible trace of movement through places that no longer explain themselves. There is also the matter of precision. Many ancient roads are remarkably straight. Roman engineers, for example, were known for minimizing curves whenever possible, cutting directly through landscapes with a level of consistency that still shapes modern routes today. This precision reflects engineering skill, but from above, it creates another effect. The roads begin to resemble lines drawn across the surface of the earth, deliberate, measured, persistent. Even after centuries of erosion and reconstruction, their paths remain visible. In some regions, ancient roads can only be fully seen through aerial photography or satellite imagery. Faint lines crossing fields, forests, and deserts reveal networks far larger than what is visible at ground level. And often, these networks extend beyond known centers of population. Again, there are explanations. Trade routes may have connected temporary settlements or seasonal movements. Roads may have served military campaigns, whose associated structures no longer survive. Entire regions may once have supported larger populations than they do today. All of this is plausible, but the repetition of the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Roads surviving where cities do not. pathways continuing beyond visible purpose, infrastructure outlasting the civilizations that created it. There are also roads buried beneath modern cities, older layers of movement hidden below newer streets. Excavations in ancient urban centers sometimes reveal multiple generations of roads, stacked beneath one another, each belonging to a different era. This suggests continuity, not just of settlement, but of direction. Cities rise and fall, but movement persists along the same paths, as though certain routes remain important even after the original reasons for their importance have disappeared. And perhaps that is what gives ancient roads their unusual presence. Unlike ruins, which feel static and abandoned, roads imply activity. They are built not to remain still, but to be used. Even in decay, they suggest motion. Someone traveled here, repeatedly, enough to shape the landscape itself. This creates a strange kind of absence, because when standing on an ancient road surrounded by empty land, the mind instinctively searches for context, a destination, a settlement, evidence of the people who once moved through the space, and sometimes very little remains. Only the road. This does not mean the history is hidden. In many cases, it has simply eroded. Structures disappear faster than foundations. With decays, smaller settlements vanish almost completely over long enough periods of time. But the roads endure, especially stone roads. They remain long after the environments around them have changed. Forests grow over them, cities bury them, fields erase their edges, and still, the lines persist beneath the surface. There is also a broader implication to consider. Modern civilization is built on dense networks of railways, communication systems. Much of daily life depends on these invisible connections. But if enough time passed, what would remain? Perhaps not the buildings, perhaps not the records, but maybe the roads. Fragments of movement surviving after the reasons for that movement are forgotten. Seen this way, ancient roads become less like isolated archaeological features and more like echoes. Evidence not just of where people lived, but of how they moved through the world, how connected they were, how large their systems may have been before those systems fragmented. And this shifts the perspective slightly, from asking why roads lead nowhere, to asking whether nowhere simply reflects what no longer survives. Because a road without a visible destination may not be incomplete. It may be the last remaining part of something larger, something whose surrounding structures disappeared while the path itself endured. The roads remain because movement leaves deeper marks than presence. A city can vanish. A road continues, quietly crossing landscapes that no longer explain it. And perhaps that is why these ancient routes feel so unsettling when seen today. Not because they are mysterious on their own, but because they suggest the outline of connections we can no longer fully reconstruct. A map with most of its landmarks missing, a system still visible, but only in fragments. So when we stand on these roads, watching them disappear into forests, deserts, or distant horizons, the question is not only where they lead, it is what once existed strongly enough to require them, and how much of that world has already faded, leaving behind only the path.